Now we will see how the OAuth works in GitHub and how we can build an applications using the GitHub OAuth. In order, usually the working of OAuth 2.0 is like first we need to create an application inside. For example, if I'm using the GitHub OAuth, I need to create a OAuth application inside GitHub. If I am using Spotify OAuth, I need to create an application inside uh, developers.spotify, and if I'm using Google OAuth, I need to create an application inside Google. So, and after we create an application, we will have the client ID and the client secret. And the process will be like first we will send the client ID along with the scopes to one particular URL, and then we will get a code, and we will send the data to another URL, that is callback URL, with the data like the code we got, and with the client ID, client secret, and the required data. And we can get this data from the documentation, like what are the things we need to include while sending. So the process will be like first, when we send a request to one URL, after authorization we will get a code and we will send the code, and in exchange of code we will get the access token. And once we got the access token, we can get any info based upon the scope. Like for example, I have access to read the data, and by using the access token inside the header, I can read all the GitHub profile data. For example, I have access to write the data. I can make the changes with the help of access token. So we will see that process. So first, in the developer settings, and we need to inside the OAuth applications, we need to create one new OAuth app, and I have already created one OAuth app. And once we created the OAuth app, we will have two data. First thing is the client ID, and the second thing is the client secret. And now we can copy the client secrets only when they are getting created. So once we got the client ID and the client secret, we can go to the authorization OAuth apps documentation. The application flow will be like first we need to send a GET request to this particular URL, and we must include the client ID while sending a GET request to this URL. We can see like what are the required things, what are the optional things, what are the things GitHub strongly recommends. And once we get the data, once we send a GET request to this particular URL, we will get the code. And then along with the code, we need to send a post request to this particular URL to get the access token. So while sending the request, we need data like the client ID, client secret, code. These are the required data we need to send for sure. And after we receive the access token, we can access the application. For example, we can get the user info by sending a GET request to this particular URL, and we need to place the token we got in authorization header. So first we'll see. So in the index.js, I have created a route called auth GitHub. So inside the auth GitHub, what I am doing is first I am constructing a GitHub auth URL. And in the GitHub auth URL, what I am doing is I have got this URL, and I am attaching the client ID as a query parameter. We can see the after the question mark client ID is the process.env.github client, and also the scopes, required scopes. And then I will be inside this auth GitHub route, I will be redirecting to the GitHub auth URL we have developed. And once the application has been redirected to the GitHub auth URL, we need to provide the permissions. Like it will ask, the new window will pop up like a particular application is trying to access your GitHub profile. We need to allow or deny. And once after we have allowed that, and this auth GitHub callback, we need to provide the callback URL inside the app also. See, we have provided. So after our consent is provided, we will be redirected to the auth GitHub callback, which is a callback URL. And inside the callback URL, in order to exchange the code for the token, we need to make a post request to this particular URL, and the data we need to attach while making a post request to this particular URL is the client ID, the client secret, and the code which we got from the previous step. And after this is done, we will get the access token. And what we are doing is we are storing the access token in a cookie, and we are securing it using set secure function. Inside the set secure function, we are creating an access token cookie, and the options we are providing to this access token is it is only HTTP only, and we are also setting the expiry is for this. And once we have the access token, we can get the user profile data. If we have a permission to change, we can change the particular things in the GitHub profile as well. So now after this, making a get request to this auth GitHub callback, and inside the auth GitHub callback route, making a post request to this particular URL, we will be having the access token. Access token, we are storing the access token in cookie, and also what we are doing is we are redirecting to the front end URL, that is what front end app, which is the UI of the app, and this is the endpoint we are moving to. Now we will see what will happen inside this endpoint. Inside the endpoint, inside the use effect, what we are doing is first we are checking whether the URL contains includes v1 or the version 2 by using the location of the use location custom hook, and the location dot pathname dot includes will give whether a URL contains v1 or not, and we are also checking whether the URL contains v2. In our case, the URL contains v2 because we are redirecting to v2 profile GitHub. So, and inside then if it contains v2, what we are doing is we are sending a get request to slash user profile GitHub as an endpoint, and the the base primary server base URL is the white server base URL, which is localhost 4000 in our case. We can see that here. So then we will be redirected to this particular route, app.user profile GitHub. And inside this particular route, what we are doing is we are getting the access token from the cookies, and we are sending a get request to this particular URL, which is provided in the GitHub documentation to get the user data, and we are placing the access token inside the authorization header, and we will get the user data as a response. We are storing the user data inside an key user, and we are sending back to the front end. And in the front end, we are using the data to display the name, the login, how many followers a particular user have, how many repositories, how many public repositories, how many private repositories, how many followers, how many are following. Now we will see a demo of it. First we will run app, and one more thing is we have two things here. One is OAuth front end and second thing is OAuth server. In order to run these two things in parallel, we are using a package called concurrently, and inside the script in the install we are using concurrently to run these two scripts, this one and this one simultaneously. And in this server what we are doing, in this step what we are doing is, first we are moving to the OAuth server directory, and the npm install will dump all the things which are available in its package.json to its node modules. And in this step what we are doing is we are moving to OAuth front end directory, and this npm I will install all the packages available in the package.json in its node modules. And the in dev what we are doing is we are moving to the OAuth server and we are running npm run dev, and we are moving the OAuth front end, we are running npm run dev. In the OAuth front end, in the package.json, we have dev as white, so our white will be run, and we'll have a React app with localhost 3000. And simultaneously, similarly for the backend, we are using NodeMon. See, we can see here in the scripts, dev we are running this NodeMon index.js. So our front end and back end will go up, will start running, and we can use. So we will run this npm run dev. Our backend server started, and our front end is also up. We can move this to particular URL. We have two options here. By clicking on login with GitHub, we will be asked to authorize, and upon authorization we will be redirected to first to the callback URL, and inside the callback URL we will make a post request. We will get a access token in exchange of a code, and the access token will be stored in cookie, and we will be redirected to this particular URL. And inside this particular URL, inside the use effect, we will be redirected to the GitHub slash profile URL. We will get the user data from that request, and the user data, we will use the user data to display our info. And here I have 0 followers, 0 following, 18 public repos and 0 private repos. And by clicking on the visit profile I can visit my profile.